The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 925. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. You can now purchase Bridging the Confidence Gap, How Empowered Women Change the World on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Indigo, and other book retailers sold worldwide. Get your copy today! Well, hello friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have an amazing lady on the show today. She's a Canadian TV personality, keynote speaker, also a podcaster, and I'm super excited to have her on to share her story and tips on self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Erika Casupanan. Hey, Erika, welcome to the show. How are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Hi, thank you for having me. Doing great, yeah. What is there to know about me? Well, I think that most people know me as the first Canadian to win Survivor. So I was on Survivor back in 2021, which feels like a long time ago. But then I'm like, wait, that's not so far away. And then since then, I've been working as a multi-platform storyteller to tell stories that inspire people who have been underestimated or feel like an underdog. So yeah, I work as a keynote speaker. I have a podcast myself called Happy to See Me. I'm a media personality and I'm doing all sorts of things on the internet. So thank you for having me.
I love that, and thank you so much for being here, and congrats for being the first Canadian to win Survivor. That is so awesome. Sometimes Canada gets a little bit forgotten, even though we're right beside the US, and to be able to pave the way for that, that's so amazing. And Erica, what's your cultural background?
I'm from the Philippines. So I was born in Manila and then I moved to Canada. I was still very, very young. So all of my memories are in Canada, but definitely grew up immigrant household. Parents spoke to me in Tagalog. I understand Tagalog. I could watch a movie. In terms of speaking, very hit or miss. And I've been told I have a very North American accent. So it's funny when I speak Tagalog. But yes, I'm from the Philippines.
Thanks for sharing that. Don't worry, I was born in Cebu. I came to Toronto when I was 7, and my Tagalog also is very bad. So I'm like you, I watched the movies, but when you watch Tagalog movies, it's like half English, half Tagalog. And so it's a little bit easier. And then just hearing it from like friends and relatives. But when I try to like speak it, it's terrible. Like the best I can do is negotiate at Chunget. That's pretty much the closest thing.
Oh, well, how do you say it's like Mancano?
Yeah, Magano. So that's the best I could do.
Sorry to any Tagalog speakers listening.
And what would be your favorite self-confidence quote?
Okay, I'm not going to be able to say this word for word, but there is a quote that Brene Brown uses a lot that is a Churchill quote called "The Man in the Arena." And it's essentially talking about how when you are in the arena and you're putting yourself out there, the opinions of the people who are in the stands who are just pointing out how everybody could have done something differently or done something better, it doesn't really matter because they're the ones who are just in the stands. What's most important are the people who are actually getting into the arena, taking the risk and taking the risk to potentially get their ass kicked and taking the risk to potentially win. Because if you're actually in there and you're putting yourself out there, at best, you get to win. And at worst, at least you got to, and as Brene Brown says, you get to dare greatly and you get to grow from taking the risk and being in there. So I always like to think about that. I think especially as I've grown into somebody who is now a public facing person, which is such a wild thing. But now that I'm, I guess, a public ish figure, I've definitely dealt with a mix of positive feedback from the public and negative feedback from the public. And I've just had to remember that I'm the one that is putting myself out there. And at the end of the day, while I respect that people have the right to their opinion, if you're not also out there taking a risk, then your opinion doesn't really matter to me.
I love that. I'm gonna have to search for that quote, and it's so true. Like, it's not easy putting yourself out there, being in the arena, being that person, paving the way, especially being Asian women, it's like double that, I feel. They see you a certain way, they think, oh, you're a woman, how would you know what do you know what what do you think you can offer to the world? And it's really important to have platforms like this so you can showcase your talents, what you can contribute to the world. And so I'm just grateful you're able to do that to pave the way because I know it's not easy. I'm sure you have tons of stories and it takes a lot of courage and confidence to go out there to deal with so many different things that nobody even really talks about. So I just want to say thanks for sharing that. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
I think that I don't know if this is the actual, I know it's not the actual definition of confidence, but I think for me, self confidence is the assurance that you will be okay no matter the circumstances. So whether or not something ends up in a positive way, in the way that you want it, in the way you expect it, or if anything, or if everything ends up blowing up and it does not go the way that you planned, it's the assurance that you will be able to handle it.
I love that. That's a great definition. And yeah, like sometimes, things don't always pan out the way we see it, but, we keep moving forward. And sometimes, they don't work out for a reason and everything will pan out as you keep going forward, as you keep moving forward. So thanks for sharing that great definition. And Erica, what was your life like before discovering self-confidence?
I don't know if I had a moment where I was like, now I'm confident. I don't think I had the aha moment. I think that I think that as a kid, I always had a really strong sense of self. And then I think that I ran into different challenges. I think, especially being a Filipino immigrant to Canada, where having a strong sense of self is often at odds with the more traditional female culture where they're like, okay, fall in line with the family. So I think that the confidence that I naturally had created a lot of conflict for me when I was quite young. And then because of that, entering the world, whether it's in school or working, all the messages I got were, you actually need to be quieter and not have these opinions and kind of fall in line with everyone else, which I respect where that's coming from. And I respect that it's a survival tactic. I think, especially if you come from an immigrant family and they have worked hard to get there and they just want you to be able to fit in. So I totally respect that those signals come from a place of love and of self preservation. But I think that because of that, I found myself often being confused and feeling like I had to be a bit smaller. And then as I went on in my career, before I was on reality TV, I worked for a decade in public relations, corporate communications, marketing, issues management, always the one who would clean up the mess for people or to quietly be in the background, propping people up and making other people look good. And so I think that the quote unquote confidence that I thought that I had before was largely tied to achievement and output. I think that I objectively knew, okay, if I perform really well at school or if I enter this competition, I would do like tech competitions and stuff when I was younger. I'm like, if I enter this and I win, then I know that objectively, then I am good. And I think that I needed that type of validation because I was so confused about how I was supposed to be in the world. And I think that a lot of the confidence came from, the gold stars and the check marks. And then as I moved away from my career and decided that I actually didn't want to be doing what I was doing for 10 years, and then I went on Survivor, and then I ended up winning in my own way that I think was really different than a lot of people who had played the game before me. I think I realized that, okay, it's actually me that is good enough and that's worthy. It is not all of the achievements. It is not checking off the boxes. It's not doing things based on how other people expected it. And I think I definitely started to feel like the illusion that I created for myself in terms of achievement and validation through work, that really was starting to lose its shine as I was getting ready to quit my career and go on reality TV. And then I think in the last year of that chapter of my life, I was like, wait, this all is kind of BS. And I think that that's when I really started to step into this version of me that was like, wait, I am enough. And then by the time I got to film a reality show, that was the me that was playing and that was on display. And I think that it was more confirmation that I was on the right track in terms of finding confidence within myself rather than in the exterior.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that because I mean, that's a lot of in Asian culture, it's always measured by achievements, by grades, by the best cars, the best job, whose family's better, whose wedding is better. It's always like the compare game, and it's exhausting, right? And also, growing up, we've been taught to do everything our parents tell us to do, right? And so that also means seeking validation from our parents. It's like if we don't follow the path, then something's wrong with us. And especially being in North America, there's so many different ways to build a business, to build a career, to do things differently. But of course, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've always been taught go to school, get a job, work till you retire. Like I mentioned, nothing wrong if that's what you want to do. That's totally fine. But, now we have this moment we can take and do something different. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I mean, it's going to be worthwhile knowing that we can make a dent in this world. And then also, in Asian culture just alone, we've always been taught to never make any noise, do as you're told, just work in the background, just work hard, and the work speaks for itself. And unfortunately, that doesn't always equate to promotions. It just means you're working hard. And so it's really important to show up, to be like authentic, even though I know that's played out, but it's so true, like being your true self, being different. That's what sets you apart from everybody else. And I was just curious, what made you decide to apply for Survivor and just say, I'm going to do it? Like, what was that aha moment in your time, in your journey?
There was not an aha moment. It was more like as soon as I found out that Canadians were eligible to be on the show, I instantly applied for the show. For the longest time, since it's an American show, Canadians couldn't be on the show. And I had said to everybody my entire life since the first season came out that one day I was going to be on Survivor and I was going to win, which sounds wild, right? Like I was a kid and I wasn't even eligible to be on the show, but I just felt so sure. So I think that that goes back to the younger version of me who always had this strong sense of self. I just always knew I was going to be on that show and I was going to win. So when I applied for the show, again, there was not really a decision. I was like, I'm going to be there. I think that if I think back to why I first started watching the show, so, like many Asian immigrants, I grew up in a multi generational home and I lived with my siblings, my parents, and my grandparents. And my parents worked a lot, which meant that I spent a lot of my time with my grandparents. And when I was about 11 years old, my grandpa passed away. And it was the first time that somebody that I knew had died. And it also was somebody that I was close to and I spent a lot of time with day to day. And it was just really confusing. And of course, my parents, who had to keep the family going, they took some time off to mourn, but then they had to be back at work. So I just remember being a kid with all these confused feelings. And then all of a sudden, this new show premieres, and it's these people living outside, and they are overcoming all of these circumstances, and they're doing things that I'd never seen people do before, and they're pushing themselves. And as a kid, I was so transfixed. I think that now, as an adult, when I think about where I was at that time, I was probably watching the show to escape, right? And then this ended up just being a show that I got so into. And I remember watching the finale of the first season, and I was like, I'm going to win that show one day. And throughout my life, I continued watching the show, and it became for me similarly like an escape. And I remember whenever I would do things in life, I was like, okay, this is building me up because when I'm going to be on Survivor, then I'm going to be ready and I'm going to win. And it was like this hour of escape and happiness and a moment where I felt inspired and motivated and I could dream and think of something more. So that was really what the show meant to me my whole life. So then by the time I was able to apply, I was like, yeah, obviously I'm going to be out there. And it is still a trip to me that I loved the show so much. And then I not only became the first person who lived in Canada to ever be on the show, then I actually won, which is wild.
Well, thanks for sharing that and sorry to hear about your grandfather. I know like grandparents hold a special place in our heart, especially when you get to spend time with them day to day. It really is that special relationship. And I think that is such an amazing story. Like as a kid, you're like, I'm gonna join. You didn't know what, when, or like how you're gonna do it. You're just like, I'm gonna join. And sometimes we just need to like manifest that. And then when that opportunity comes, you just went for it. You didn't know what the outcome was gonna be. You're just like, I'm gonna apply. They said Canadians are allowed now. I'm just gonna do it. And sometimes, we have opportunities presented to us and we're so scared to take it because of how we see ourselves. I'm not good enough. There's someone better out there. I'm not prepared. I mean, first of all, how do you prepare for Survivor? I mean, you've watched from season one to, I'm sure you know some of the things what to do, but still like you are always never prepared to be in that situation. You just kind of like figure it out as you go. And so I really love that you were able to make that happen. And I'm sure when you said I'm going to join Survivor and win, people were like, "Okay, like sure, if you say so." But you made it happen. And so I just want to say congrats. Thank you for taking that leap because, it shows others what's truly possible. Like you don't have to figure things out. You just know you'll be capable as you go. Like you have enough self-assurance to know you'll make it happen. And because of that, what's your life been like now?
Yeah, I mean, I so when I filmed Survivor, it was 2021. I was actually supposed to film Survivor in March 2020, but then for obvious reasons, that didn't happen. But when I look back at where my life was at the beginning of 2020 and then where I'm at now towards the end of 2025, totally different, right? When people ask me, did your life change after the show? I was like, nothing about the life that I had before existed, right? Like I was a kid, not a kid, I was in my 30s going to the office every day. And then that's not a thing anymore. That office doesn't exist anymore that I used to go to. So it's because people asked, "Oh, did you want to go back to your regular life before?" And I was like, "That life is gone. That life doesn't exist anymore." So totally different world now. My life has changed in so many ways. So now I work for myself, which has been amazing. I think that after having a career where I would build up other people in the background, it is really fun to now be the person that I am supporting and I'm out there telling stories. So all of my work, whether it's podcasting or social media or keynote speaking, it all comes from the place of wanting to inspire people who have felt like the underdog or who have even underestimated themselves to realize that they have their own power and they have their own capability within what they already have and who they already are right now.
Well, first off, thank you so much for being in the forefront. I know it's not always easy to go from behind the scenes and being the main character, especially being Asian women, because we're always taught to like, be in the background, never make any noise, do as you're told. And so here you are paving the way, showing others what's possible, and really knowing that who you truly are is something that can work in the real world when you have a career, whether it's in corporate or by yourself. And to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey to self-confidence. What would be that one tip you would give to her?
I would say you have to, I always think of it as like building a confidence snowball because you're not going to feel confident all of the time, and that's okay. But you essentially have to create proof for yourself, right? So I live in Canada, it snows, and I think about when you build a snowball, you first pick up snow and you kind of mush it together. It doesn't look like a ball at all. And I think of that step as like, what is the first example in your head of why you are worthy or why you are capable or why you deserve to be somewhere, right? So it's like, is there something that you had achieved in the past? Was there a hard conversation that you had? Was there a situation when you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone and you were proud of the result? So, take that example. And then slowly you start to add more and more onto it. And then this weird little nub that you create in the snow starts to look like a ball. And then eventually you add more and more and you start rolling the ball in the snow and it gets bigger and bigger. And then it eventually becomes this boulder of examples of all of the ways that you have proven to yourself that you are capable. And then in those moments when I start to doubt myself, or in those moments where the negative self-talk comes in, then I can look at this proof that I have and I can respond back to that negative self-talk and say, okay, I know you're saying this right now, but I did all of this and I am all of this. So thank you for your opinion, but I'm going to keep going and I'm going to be okay. So yeah, collect that proof for yourself.
I love that. And I love that snowball analogy, especially in, Canada and Toronto. The snow can be very bad. So we definitely have enough snow at times to make a huge boulder. So thanks for sharing that. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you, what you do, check out your podcast, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Yes. So my podcast is called Happy to See Me, and it's available wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm going to have Sheena on my show. I don't know if it'll be out before or after this one, but if it is before or after this one, I'll make sure to link to this episode or vice versa. And then I'm most active on Instagram. So on Instagram, I am Erika underscore Cas. That is ERIKA underscore CAS.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Erika, you can also head on over to thetowofselfconfidence.com and search for Erika's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I just really want to thank Erika today for taking the time to share her story, her tips. Love your survivor story. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And I appreciate everything that you're doing to build confidence in women.
Thank you. And it was such an honor having you on the show. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of the Tao of Self-Confidence. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to get your daily boost of confidence.